I know Kung Fu.
Show me.
You are the new student. Come closer.
You're listening to the Kung Fu Podcast presented by James Still.
I don't care if it's Muhammad, Imard, Bruce Lee.
And Steve Newby.
This is the original Five Fingers of Death right here.
But my hands are registered as lethal weapons. That means we get into a fight, I accidentally kill you, I go to jail.
Good stuff.
Are you eating or something?
No, I've just got a tablet.
Oh,
I've got
right,
to
okay.
drink a Coke. I need some sugar after tonight. Yeah. Right. Well, I think we're good to go. And as ever, the non-scripted, unrehearsed mess that is the Kung Fu Podcast.
Yep. Yeah.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 5, podcast 5 of the Kung Fu Podcast. My name's James Still, and I am joined by my teacher, Mr. Steve Newby. Hi, Steve.
Hi. Yeah, I wonder if actually people know that this is rehearsed or not rehearsed, rather.
Well,
I mean, whether they understand that we like to fly by the seat of our pants, Master Wing.
I mean, it's hardly a polished podcast, is it? You know, I mean, if they don't realise.
Not interested in it. No, I want to talk from the heart. I want to talk. So sometimes I'm going to struggle with words, the same as you are. I mean, you're just asking the questions, I guess. But I'm going to struggle with words, and I'm going to, obviously, often I'm just talking straight out my head or out my ass or wherever people want to. And people can make their own decisions as to whether I'm making sense or not. And that's basically it. That's what we're doing it for. We're giving people the opportunity to get at least one version of truth.
Well,
now, whether they, don't believe it or whether they imagine that, martial arts is some kind of amazing thing that teaches you to levitate and fly and whatever, then that's up to them.
Yeah.
But,
well, you got to be.
Let's just give them a reality check.
Yeah, but you got to be careful when you start.
Maybe they can do the same for us.
Well, you got to be careful when you start saying the truth, because it is your truth. So you're not the be all and end all of martial arts. I'm sure you'd agree.
Yeah. Just bear with me a second. I'm having a little sound difficulty here. Can you speak?
Hello, testing.
Yeah,
1, 2,
yeah,
1, 2.
I got it. Yeah,
You got it.
I got a really bad. Yeah, I got a bad connection for my mic when it goes in when the earphones go into the mic thing. So,
okay.
But that's good. Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah. So, I was thinking, as always, getting some inspiration for this podcast. So I was watching a Wing Chun vid on YouTube, as you do. The thing about Wing Chun is it's probably the most proliferated style of kung fu in the world. What do you reckon about that?
Well, it's popularised by Bruce Lee, isn't it? Who did a little bit of it. We've talked about that before, and it's a pretty, because of that, I guess it's a pretty well-known name, Wing Chun.
Yeah.
So beautiful springtime.
My question is, so you're watching sort of the basis of. I mean, I can't speak for Wing Chun. I haven't trained it. However, I've trained with people who've studied Wing Chun, and I have somewhat of a grasp of the theories of it, right? Because let's face it, it is all kung fu's are essentially the same, blah blah blah, but they operate under different strategies and tactics, shall we say. Of course, that's an expansive subject on its own, but essentially what you tend to get with a lot of Wing Chun is that their entire system of fighting is based around chisao, or sticking hands. Now, by its nature, and I don't know, please by all means correct me, but I'm under the impression that by its nature, sticking hands requires you to stick, as in you need touch, you need that feeling. Okay,
Yeah.
but we can classify sticking hands to different types of exercises or ways of doing it. But generally speaking, if we look at, say, Wing Chun, for example, it's a version of sticking hands which requires you to be in contact with an opponent, hence the name contact reflex, meaning you have to touch them to feel them, to know where they are, to be able to hit them or find openings. Now, with that being the case, where is the weakness in that attitude of saying my entire fighting strategy or system is based on sticking hands?
I'm not sure if they do say that their entire fighting strategy is based on sticky hands. I mean, some will, because don't forget you get a lot of different camps, even though it may be the same style. You've got lots, particularly Wing Chun is spread around. You know, some people call it Wing Chun, some people call it Wing Chun, or Wing Chun, or Wing Sun, whatever. And so you've got a lot of different camps. You know, often they don't particularly complement each other. They have their own, you know, idea of how it should be done. But in general, sticky hands is kind of a link between basics to a fighting ability. It's certainly not a fighting ability in itself. It's recognized as a necessity. Oh, I've got to get this word right.
Necessity.
Necessity. Yeah, that's it. For training, for sensitivity, yeah, and it is an amazing. It is unique to Kung Fu, and they particularly concentrate an awful lot of training on that. But it's not a be-all and end-all to fighting. It is just merely an exercise, and often people who don't understand sticky hands or don't practice sticky hands in any way miss the point about that kind of training. They look at you kind of working together, and they say, well, why hasn't he punched him yet, or why hasn't he done this yet, or why hasn't he done that yet, or why doesn't he just kick him in the groin instead? Your exercise, it's a pure and simple exercise for sensitivity, and we need to I guess get that out there and make sure people understand that sticky hands is not a fight. So you can certainly do sticky hands competition, so that you are trying to be more sensitive than the other guy. You're able to feel his movements and therefore pull him off a mat, for instance. You know, they often have you know, competitions where the mats are raised.
Oh,
and
yeah,
so on.
yeah. I mean, I've seen that. I mean, sort of Lau, the British Kung Fu Association has sticking hands competitions. But I think you'd agree, right? It's fair to say that sticking hands competitions sometimes they barely resemble sticking hands, and it looks like a friggin' scene from, I don't know, Enter the Dragon. You know, when they put their hands together and Bruce Lee, whoa, bang, you know, and hits him.
And then that goes,
and it sort of escalates into something that looks incredibly scrappy and everything that you would assume sticking hands is not.
But you know what? A lot of martial arts look like that too. You know, they look great when they're doing their forms and so on. Then they come to fighting and it all goes to pot. And the reason for that is they just don't train it enough.
Right.
It's simple, you know, and particularly, I mean, I can speak for the BKFA. I know that they don't train enough of it, and I'm sure they'd like to. I'm sure a lot of camps would like to, but a lot of them are very involved in more tournament strategies and so on. So their fighting is really much more loosely based on competitive fighting, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I was the instigator of the rule that suggests you have to be sponsored by your instructor in order to participate in those sticky hands, because they were becoming such a mess that people were, you know, just getting poked in the eye or kicked in the groin.
I think a lot of it is people don't understand the difference between training sticking hands for an exercise in sensitivity, as opposed to training sticking hands and finding fighting applications from it. And then, of course, you've got the arena whereby you would use sticking hands or techniques from sticking hands just purely to throw techniques at people and see if you can block and counter, and etc. But I think there's a lot of misunderstanding what type of sticking hands is applicable in a certain training environment.
Yeah, well, in a fighting environment, sticky hands is merely a direction, if you like. Of I've got to look for words now because
it's hard to talk about it on a podcast, isn't it?
Well, it's just to bring it straight out like that. I mean, when people are fighting, then they're not doing sticky hands. They're benefiting from the practice of sticky hands, and they can only benefit from the practice they had. If they haven't done enough practice, they'll have less benefit. So they'll look a lot more scrappy, a lot more undefined or unrefined, if you want. So that's what you get from people who suddenly you throw in the determination to win as opposed to the determination to feel and to perceive what's happening.
But doesn't that determination to win often detract from the skill?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It will detract from it because you often let's say, for instance, someone gets a technique over on you, so they benefit and the fight is stopped and then you have to start again and so on, or you end up on the floor and so on. The first thing you want to do is get that back. That's the first thing that most people want to do, is they want to try and get that. They want to get even. They don't try to pursue the concept of the feel and the touch and so on. Because they just haven't trained it enough, and I think a lot of the time people's egos get in the way and they can't pursue it in the same way they really should.
So if sticking hands is, I don't know whether you agree with this or not, if sticking hands is more about cooperation than competition, how can you make a competition out of sticking hands? Doesn't that detract from the meaning of it, or how does it work?
Well, it's responding from a competition. It makes it a competition. You're responding from an action. That's what you've got to try to do. You've got to dominate as a result of your feeling of that action. But of course, if you never felt it and it hit you and you weren't ready, then you then try to find different directions in order to succeed or to get again one over on the next person. So really, in that case, you've just got to keep on going back to the drawing board. You've just got to keep on going back to training sticky hands, and the more you train it, the less those situations will arise where you are caught out, or of course one of you has got to be caught out, but the benefit of understanding sticky hands or being able to train sticky hands to any length or fine degree is that you are eventually going to be able to feel everything, and that's the whole point of it.
Right.
I guess competition is test. It's not so much testing sticky hands as testing the person who's practiced it. Okay,
so like if we're talking about testing sticky hands, so you become quite well versed in it. If you've got a fighting system, all right, so this brings it back onto the Wing Chun. Now, obviously, I don't want to speak for Wing Chun, but this is just my perception of it. If you've got a fighting system like Wing Chun, which emphasizes more than anything else sticking hands, then when you put that fighting system in an arena whereby you're not relying on sticking hands, e.g., let's just say competition fighting, for example, all right, when it's all about you're not touching me because I'm not going to let you get in my range, all right? I'm interpreting your distance towards me. I'm perhaps feinting. I'm going to try and hit you as fast as possible, and in some cases trying to disguise my punching so you don't even see it. So where does sticking hands then come into play in that situation?
Okay, well, obviously when you're trying to feint and you're trying to throw the punch as fast as possible, that is going to throw many people who are trying to or have tried to practice sticky hands. But the more they practice sticky hands, it isn't about the distance between you, it's when they make that distance, when they reach you. So as the punch comes into play, as it, I guess, is within arm's reach, and you're able to perceive it and you're able to feel it, the second you feel it, it's what happens after that. Because if they're going to retract that arm, you're going to be capable of feeling that retraction, and you're going to be able to follow it, or you're going to be able to respond in the correct way based on the information you're given from the movement of their body. So if they're retracting the arm, you're going to be able to follow it with your punch without taking your hand off it, so you're covering it and striking at the same time, and obviously moving your body into a much better position, prepared to continue and follow on that attack. So it's about the feel of the immediate connection. It's the same as in real fighting, in self-defense. Someone grabs you, immediately you respond by touching that arm, by feeling that arm, by locking that arm, by damaging that arm, by doing whatever you want. But you have control of that arm now. When I say control of it, I don't mean total control of it. I mean you have a perception of that arm, so you know what the arm's going to do. So if they do let go, you're not just going to let them let go. From then on, you're going to follow that arm, and that arm is going to lead you to their head. That arm is going to lead you to their body, and so on. It's going to lead you to the direction they're trying to go, so you know from that point on every step they're going to try to make. That is what Sticky Hands is trying to create, trying to devise. And the more you practice that, the better you will get at it at speed. But if you don't practice it enough at speed, then of course you're never going to be able to use it in competition, never mind real fighting. And so the slower you learn initially, the more you will pick up. The slower you practice, the more you will learn. And then obviously you've got to start to increase that speed, but you've got to have two like-minded people who are both have thrown away their egos and are both working together to try to get the sensitivity working, not to find out who's going to be the best. You can always check that out later. You can try that with a lot of people. See if your sensitivity does work and not just work on the person you practice with. And of course try to practice with a lot of people. But isn't it so that the irony is that because people just don't practice it, or maybe don't understand Sticky Hands, they don't employ it so much in their classes, so less people practice it, so less people understand it, so less people can do it with you. You obviously you end up with nobody to practice with, no one to train with. So it's one of those training methods, one of those arts, if you like, that is on the brink of extinction, except for the martial arts that do really try to sustain it, because it is one of them, and Wing Chun is a good example, because it's one of those things that they kind of rely on as a direction from basic movement to a fighting process. But whether or not it's obviously it's debatable whether or not they're relying on it too much, because they would expect everyone to fight in a similar way to them.
Straight punches.
They don't necessarily pursue other things, but it depends how good the martial artist is, whether he's done Wing Chun or whatever. I mean, if the guy isn't doing Wing Chun and he decides to fight a Wing Chun guy, and the Wing Chun guy is relying totally on that feel, if he's good enough, let's hope. That's what it's all about. That's what Sticky Hands is about, is to allow someone to know every person they fight. But you've got to understand the concept of sweeping, you've got to understand the concept of feinting, and all these things are going to be, no matter what style you do, have got to be a real important ingredient in the combat, in a fight.
Do you think that Wing Chun's over reliance on Chi Sao as an interpretation of fighting is to their detriment?
I don't do Wing Chun, so I can't really comment on that. I've seen some very good responses in them doing Sticky Hands when I've watched videos and so on. But I mean, I did do a little bit of Wing Chun. Never got to Sticky Hands and that in their style. I don't like the way they do it. simply because the way they do bong sao, the chicken wing block where they raise their elbow high. I would not like to raise my elbow high because it exposes your ribs and your armpit. But they would argue that, well, wait a minute, I'm blocking the arm, so it's not exposing me to anything. Well, that depends on what the other guy can do.
Yeah.
So, any technique that exposes you in one degree or another, isn't great. But of course, I guess you can say that every technique that is an attacking technique will expose you if you've got to go from your body being A and their body to their body being B. That distance between A and B means that your arm is extracted out, and you're going to be exposed above it and below it. So it all depends on what you're doing with the rest of your body, and your perception of it, and indeed the feeling as well. So the sensitivity. So it's a catch-22 situation. Having said that, it isn't just about kind of discussing Wing Chun with sticky hands.
I'm using Wing Chun as a point of reference.
Because they do. Yeah.
Because I want your opinion on if we're learning Kung Fu, and we just train sticking hands and we say, oh, that's all we need to know for fighting, then I would argue that's not the case.
No, it isn't. It isn't. But it's again. It's not fighting per se.
No, it's not fighting.
It is sensitivity. So you can use any technique within the pursuance of a pushing hands exercise. So dependent on the style will obviously dictate what techniques you'll tend to use. Yeah. I mean that given. It's a given that it's not going to be a flying kick or a jumping back kick, but that can be. If you want, we could say that you could set that up.
Yeah, right.
If you were able to feel and know where he's going, particularly if you're in the pursuit once he's attacked you and you're following the arm back and you then are able to push him or kick him back, you can then follow that technique with a finishing blow if you want, a flying back kick or whatever you want to do, depending on your flexibility, your capability, and his capability too.
What I always think with sticking hands and training it is it sure as hell looks like Kung Fu, doesn't it? Like when you imagine in your mind what is Kung Fu and you see it in the movies, etc., and you see two really good sticking hand practitioners do it, you can say, oh, that looks like Kung Fu because he's doing it, he's blocking, he's all the different shapes and that lot.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, I think, probably would justify and overtraining, over reliance rather on sticking hands training by in their own mind. Oh, it's Kung Fu, so it looks good. We've got to train it.
Oh,
as opposed to, I'm sorry, I'm taking this. It's I want to know your opinion. But as opposed to, for example, all right, and I'll always sort of revert back to competition fighting, for example. Hey, just put on some gloves and spar. I mean. Not that one's better than the other, because they're different training methods, but I'm just saying, if you over-rely on sticking hands and you step into a boxing ring, for example, that boxer ain't going to want to let you get close or touch them. He's just going to pick you off with a jab, move around the ring, ring craft, etc. And if your whole idea is to close the gap and initiate a contact reflex, then, where's that leave you against a skilled fighter?
I want you to stick into your mind two boxers in a professional boxing ring. Yeah. They're slugging it out, okay, and one throws a punch to the other. The arm goes around his neck. He feels his neck, okay. He feels where he can throw the next punch because he knows where that guy is going. Yeah. Because he's got his hand against his head, the punch has gone out, the glove is sitting on his shoulder, it's sitting on his head, by the side of his head, and he sees how that guy is moving, even though he can't literally, it's so close and so fast that he can't see it with his eyes. He can feel the way the guy is moving.
Yeah.
So he will automatically throw the other punch, whether it's going to be an uppercut, whether it's going to be a hook, the other way around, from the other side, where he's going to back off, where he's going to feel the guy throw a punch, so he's going to duck it. Now just imagine, and I would suggest that without understanding it or without pursuing it, to a degree, sensitivity comes into play when the boxer is that close.
Yes, 100%.
Right? Yeah, and that is what we're talking about in terms of sensitivity training. In Kung Fu, they train it specifically as a science and as an exercise. In the boxing, they don't. They just come to rely on it.
Yes.
Naturally, it becomes a natural phenomena that they feel it, because it's like a guy driving a car and he knows, how the car's going to react from experience previously.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. It's just just the way it works.
But in to use the boxing analogy there, the boxers have got to be it's seriously close range for them to perceive that.
Yeah.
What happens
so
when you're
sticky
starting
hands, people?
Yeah, but what if I'm asking you, what happens if you're at a distance to start with?
Well, you can't do sticky hands at a distance.
No.
That's the thing.
You stupid James.
No, you're just going to be throwing the first technique, and the first technique to within range of the other person, if they can touch it with their hand or whatever else, because you can do it with your legs as well, then that dictates what's going to happen next, depending on the guy's skill in sensitivity. With his sensitivity, can he feel where that punch is going, or does he just want to hit the guy, and so he completely ignores what the other guy's doing? And remember what we said last time: if you know what your partner is doing, if you know what your enemy is doing, if you like, you've got 50% chance of winning. If you know what you can do, you've got 50% chance of winning. And if you know what he can do and you know what you're capable of, you have a 95% chance of winning, or around that.
Yeah.
So, but you cannot, and you cannot do sticky hands unless you are practicing your sets diligently, and you've got to not just practice the movements until they are perfectly aligned. Every time you make the same move, it goes to exactly the same spot with exactly the same muscle energy, the same position. Doesn't matter what you do, you have got to practice those movements, because you cannot, and of course you cannot do sticky hands unless you understand what those movements are for, because you can't use them. If you don't know what they're for, you can't use them. So you can do a set all you like, but until you understand what that set does and understand what the movement is for, or you have an idea of its use or a choice of uses, which it should have, then you cannot pursue sticky hands, because all you're doing is constantly parrying, because that's all you can do.
Right.
So unless you understand what follows through from that technique, or how that technique would develop from one technique to another, as in a form, then you can't do it. So
yeah. I remember going to a brown sash course with you once, and I remember we were doing sticking hands, the exercise. I think it was just like a rolling punch drill exercise. And the guy I was doing it with, he had a bit of an ego on him, and I know he'd done Wing Chun before, and instead of just doing the exercise, so we were bound within the confines of just a single technique exercise, but sticking hands together, a rolling punch, a gao choi. Instead of just doing that, he wanted to start throwing techniques. Now when you get some people you train with who think they're above the training lesson or whatever, and they just want to escalate it, and it went on like that. And in the end, he started trying to just slap me, and in the end, I just when you're doing sticking hands and you just you let go with one hand, I slapped him across the chest, and then I brought my hand up to a slap, and I slapped him across the face, and his glasses went flying off, and I thought, bloody have that. But then I think it was Morag who came and said, boys, this is out of hand. You're not doing this." And because she thought we were just fighting, but I was like, "No, I was just doing that because he did that to me." And I was just like, "Oh no!" But you see how it escalates when people don't understand the exercise as opposed to fighting.
That's right. I mean, in learning sticky hands, a lot of people, teachers, shall we say, it doesn't matter what style, a lot of teachers are going to pursue one specific exercise, right? And then they're going to move to another exercise completely separately. They're going to try another exercise. But as you know, as you coined the phrase, organic sticky hands. So this is what we prefer to do. We start from a simple movement, and we increase the rules and develop the sticky hands into a defined set of escalating developments, if you like, or rules, so that eventually we can do it freely. But we have to follow those rules, and then we slowly chip away at those rules. Like, for instance, the first thing, grabbing the hand all the time as we roll around. And then, of course, then we don't grab the hand. We try to stop the other person grabbing the hand.
Right.
Yeah. So we're now both getting to the same point, but recognizing the feeling as if he was trying to grip you. And before he can grip you, you're putting your hand in a position to prevent him from doing that, so that then you can do it, but he then does it to you to stop you from doing it, and so on, and it escalates, and then forwards and backwards, because you don't want opposing power in sticky hands. It's about flowing, like Bruce Lee says, like water. It's going to so the forward and backward motions will allow you to take the technique to him without pressing against him, against his arm, and pushing the energy outwards and inwards. You're pushing it forwards and backwards, so that is like a constant flowing and rotation, and that makes it much easier. So that's how we're creating our little fighting prowess, if you like. But it is a constantly generating exercise that just is organic by nature. It grows.
It's worth saying that we've got some there's videos on our YouTube channel, actually, guys. So if you want to know what we're talking about, I think there's like 4 videos on organic sticking hands and what we mean by that, because it's so hard to describe on a podcast. Appreciate that. But it can, the exercise of sticking hands does escalate, doesn't it, Steve? Like, you start off as an exercise, and then
but we've tried to approach it in the most basic sense, and of course we're always going to get the trolls who go, I could do this and I could do that, and you go, for God's sake, we'd be here all day if we had to describe everything, because there are millions and billions of possibilities. So you're doing a very basic preparation for teaching beginners, and at the end of the day, this is what's going to help beginners pursue it. It's not going to help anyone else.
Do you think in like today's modern world, where, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but do you not think that people who want to do a martial art and learn to fight just want to get involved, sort of, in there from the off? I mean, for example, right, and like, again, I'm devil's advocate, but you start boxing, you go into a boxing gym, you're throwing punches at each other, it feels a lot more like you're fighting. Whereas if you start, the pursuance of Kung Fu, and you start doing sticking hands, you're like, this is all great, this is nice and gentle and flowing, and I understand the energies and all the rest of it, but it doesn't feel like fighting. I don't get that sort of, that fix, if you like, that I would otherwise get if I was dancing around a ring, jabbing at someone, then, bobbing and weaving, etc. Do you know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you mean. So you're walking down the street, and you look through a doorway, and you see this old Chinese guy moving meditation. You see him doing various techniques slowly and repetitively, and you'll carry on down the street a little bit. Then you look in a second doorway, and there's a guy there who is holding a set of pads, and there's a guy punching those pads rapidly and going crazy and dancing and so on. Which one are you going to join?
I'm going to join the guy hitting the pads.
Of course you are. Exactly. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
But the whole world is made like that.
Yeah.
So Yeah, that's why you have brick houses and straw houses. You have a good foundation, and if you build that foundation, you'll have an extremely good fortification. If you want to, build on straw, then do that.
Well, the guy in the window doing the slow moving meditation probably knew more than that other guy hitting the pads will ever know.
Yeah, but this is my point, you see, a good foundation. Now, most people are not prepared to spend the time to build on a foundation. And arguably, a lot of people will say, yeah, but I don't need that foundation because, I'm punching and kicking, I can do it. But you can do it with people who are doing the same thing. In other words, people who have a like-minded situation. That if you want to do kickboxing, then you're going to be fighting people who are doing kickboxing. So let's just put it this way: you go to a kickboxing class and you start doing it to the rules of the kickboxing, and someone's there and can do sticky hands, and they feel you and they thump you because they're skilled in other ways, and they sweep you and they kick you in the shin. Well, that's not in the rules. That's not fair. Well, he's not interested in your rules. He's interested in his own ability to defend himself. He's not trying to he's not built his ideology on straw. He's intentionally not going to fight your fight. So, if you're going to do everything to rules, and sustain your whole fight through the pursuance of rules, someone's going to completely and utterly, crap on your rules eventually.
Yeah.
So it's like a boxer goes into the street and is a professional boxer, and you're telling me that no boxer has ever been mugged. I'm sorry, that's not true. People have been mugged and murdered, and they're boxers because they don't pursue the same ideology as the people that have lived their lives in the street doing that.
Yeah, they're sort of they're reliant on that sport sort of when the ref says stop, I stop sort of mentality, and I get what you mean by that. Oh, that's better. Oh, we're back. Sorry about that. We had some sound issues. You're fine. So no, I'm just very interested in sort of the Western perception of how useful the martial arts are in terms of the certain exercises you do, whether we're talking about sticking hands, weaponry, etc. You keep moving around. What are you doing?
I've just what I've done is I've just got a big my computer, my laptop desk, which is I'm stuck on my lap. So I've put my laptop on it, and so now hopefully everything is nice and smooth. Because earlier, when you said it went off, it's because I actually put my laptop over the top of the mic, so that's why it went a bit low. So, it's the consummate professional, as you know.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so there you go. So
winging it, master wing. So what I was saying was, I'm just interested in the Western perception of the martial arts by people, and and what seems useful to people in this modern day and age, as opposed to for example, right, we look at traditional kung fu training. First thing you really do in the old days, old days, was probably go into a horse riding stance for an hour, but you can't do that in this day and age because it makes no sense. It makes no sense to people in their mentality because they. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think people have got to understand that. You see, a lot of people say, yeah, but martial arts is better now. It's we're designing new ideas and creating ways of fighting that are much better than the traditional. What they forgot is those people that did that kind of training did it for their own personal survival in situations where other people were training as hard. You don't train hard, you die. That's it. What is the motto in with the SAS, for instance?
Who dares wins.
Train
hard, fight easy.
That's the one. Train hard, fight easy. Yeah. Train easy, die.
Yeah.
So Yeah, and that's basically the concept of people training at horse riding stands for so long, and then they've got the strength to be able to move, develop, absorb energy. They've got the position to be able to throw much energy. I mean, can you imagine? I want you to. Sorry, I was going to use this example. Yeah. You're pushing a van. Okay, your van's broke down, so you start pushing it. What kind of stance do you need to do that? Right. You need a really good position of your feet in order to throw energy towards that van to get it moving. Now, if you stand in a very poor posture and you try to push that van, nothing's going to happen. Yeah. So that's an example of how you would need to develop your stance so that you can then, make use of any energy you do have.
Do you remember when we did the lion dance?
Yeah.
Oh, if there was anything that was good for your stance, it would be the lion dance, wouldn't it?
Absolutely, yeah.
How good was that? Yeah.
Well, that's why mostly it's kung fu people that develop and teach and actually perform the lion dance. It is kung fu clubs, kung fu organizations that perform the lion dance. It isn't pretty much anybody else. Although today you've got a lot of people who only do the lion dance and don't do any kung fu at all.
Yes, like in those competitions in China when they're going
and in San Francisco anyway.
Oh yeah. When they're on the huge stilts and everything like that.
They do. Yeah. They do some amazing dances, but they are dances, and they've got the strength. I'm sure they've got the strength to do kung fu, but they probably don't really concentrate that much on fighting techniques.
What was the reason for the lion dance? Just explain to everybody. Why do it?
Oh, well, I mean, everybody did it to bring, good luck to this, that, and the other, didn't they? We used to do it with the restaurants and opening new places and so on, didn't we?
Yeah.
We used to.
Where they used to throw firecrackers under my belly.
I know you.
I was like, oh no.
You had no idea they were there. A lot of firecrackers went off.
I stayed in character though.
Yeah. No, it's a funny thing about the lion dance actually, because there are so many different stories of how and why it develops and so on, that you say one story, someone else is going to give another. But generally, as far as we were concerned, we did the lion dance just to, it was like a celebration and to sort of make a place, to kind of cleanse a place, if you want, give it luck and give it a good start in its development, and I guess that's been the general rule. Yeah.
Because we started doing the lion dance, I think it was back in 2005, wasn't it, with the BKFA? Because up until then, there wasn't really a huge emphasis on the lion dance within Lau Gar in the UK, and then for whatever reason, I don't know what, suddenly we were required to sort of do the lion dance. So obviously we did a load.
No, it's just I think there were a couple of people. I didn't really. I didn't have a huge interest in the lion dance initially. So that's just my camp. Again, it's all down to where people are have the emphasis, and my emphasis was competition and traditional kung fu techniques for fighting. I wasn't interested in the lion dance. I discovered the lion dance. Oh, not discovered the lion dance. I decided to pursue the lion dance as an addition to our training, I guess, when the students were getting an awful lot more experienced and so on, and were willing to do it. So I knew a guy called John Gardner, who is a really nice guy. I met him when he was a beginner on the summer course with his girlfriend as a white sash. He came, he's sitting in his tent, and he used to talk. We used to talk to him and talk to us, and then he became. I think he got to about 4th degree or something, and he was teaching the lion dance to people. And I said, "Come along and teach it to our students."
Oh, was he the one with the beard? Was he the one with the beard? Yeah, he was a really nice guy. He was.
Yeah, he's a really nice guy. Yeah. So he as part of the BKFA, he helped develop our area as far as the lion dance is concerned, and that's where I got it from. But I had no real interest in it initially. So But you see, the lion is not necessarily the Lau Gar emblem, if you like, or anyway, because the unicorn dance is more Lao.
Right. Why is that? Why? Can you explain that?
It's just the history of it. It's just that's where Lao is derived. It's it celebrates with the unicorn, but generally the lion is far more well known, and it's a better dance because it has moving eyes and moving ears and moving mouth, whereas the unicorn doesn't. So the unicorn dance is kind of very much like the dragon dance, where you get lots of people under a very long a very long sort of costume.
That's the thing about the lion, though. Like going back to like with the moving parts and that, what people don't realise, it's essentially a big wicker basket covered in paper mache, isn't it? And on the inside you've got certain strings and ropes, which when you pull them, they sort of close the eyelids or move the ears. And you control the flap, which is the mouth and everything, and it's quite animated as well, isn't it? And the back guy, because there's two people.
He works the tails.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. No,
he wags the tail. Yeah. And it's it's called a foo dog for a reason, because it's like a foo is tiger, and it's represents like a foo dog, if you want. I don't know why it's like Chinese and English terminology, foo and dog, but it basically is a lion, because a lion is a tiger without the stripes, it looks like a dog.
How many people go, that's a dragon though? It's like, no.
I know, yeah.
Yeah.
But I did, and I do like the lion dance, and I do like teaching the lion dance as well, but it's again, it's something that you have to get committed people to, and really work on. Otherwise, you lose it very quickly. And we did do we participated in competitions as well with the BKFA and so on.
I think we came second in the first ever BKFA competition.
And people came up to us and said, yours was the best, but it wasn't traditional enough.
It wasn't traditional
because we made up our own music. We did the drumming the way we wanted to do the drumming. We did it in a much more modern sense, in a very similar kind of.
It was like AC/DC. Come on, that was awesome. But no, it wasn't. It was traditional drumming, but it was.
It was kind of going in along the same kind of lines as the guys do in San Francisco when they do a lion dance. Not so athletic, because we don't pursue the lion dance in the same way they do, of course, but it did have the same kind of realms. It did have the same kind of desired effect, rolling around, wagging the tail, all the rest of it, and yes, it was more of a modern approach to the lion, and that's why we didn't win.
No, but what I don't
even though it was the best.
Yeah, but even though people said to you, and that's happened to you before, and we'll talk about that in a sec. But but when they say, oh, it wasn't traditional enough, right? What about the story of Master Yao's grandfather's teacher? Am I right? Yeah. And was it Wang Gung Wing? Wang Gung Wing. And you explain it, because
Well, he wasn't a rich guy. He had a basket. He used a basket as a lion's head, and people would laugh at him when he came to perform the lion dance with his kind of effort of a lion. But he would win, because the rule was basically that if you win the lion dance, then you win the other people's lions.
Yeah.
And he used to walk away with a lot of other people's lions, because he was extremely good at the lion dance. But that's the story that I have.
But it was other martial art clubs, wasn't it? Because each martial art club had a.
It's Chinese New Year. They celebrate Chinese New Year with loads of lion dancing, and it's competitive, and they used to pursue it in that way, and he was very successful in winning those kind of competitions.
Yeah.
So.
It's funny that how yours was the best, but we didn't win. But we're playing to the crowd. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
We've got fans out there. We got fans. What about when you did a set and everybody and it was at when was it, the 30th anniversary celebrations or whatever? We've got that video on YouTube, and again, I don't want to go to I'm not here to badmouth anyone, but I'm just saying that people came up to you and said, Steve, your set was the best, didn't they? which is nice.
I did get that. It is a matter of opinion, of course, but you know, I was at the car park and people walked up to me and went, you know, we loved yours. Yours was the best. Sort of thing. So yeah, I do kind of blow my own trumpet in that sense. But of course, there were people that really worked hard and really trained hard, and they did their weapons and so on, and it was stuff that they made up for themselves as well. So they really worked hard on developing their own
would you
take on it.
Would you say? I mean, Lau Gar as a style, it isn't a really showy offy style, is it?
No, it isn't. I can talk about Lau and you know, as long as you like, you know, it's at least I have some kind of knowledge in Lau, so rather than Wing Chun and
no,
you know,
but how many times have you said to me, Kung Fu is essentially, you know, the same techniques, just, you know, interpreted in different ways. So when I mention Wing Chun, I'm simply analysing strategies and tactics of their training or maybe their fighting. But
I think.
You know,
I was going to say, I think you could have assimilate the two, because although their direction is, they have a limited sets. It's just the history that has created this. They do have a limited number of forms in their style. That doesn't mean anything. That just means they practice them more. And obviously, the sticky hands is a massive emphasis, as we've talked about. But as far as the Lau is concerned, it really annoys me how people will sometimes come to you and say, well, you know, there are so many Setchgul and so many moves and so many this and so many that. And you just, wait a minute, they're the same moves. There are additional moves and additional concepts added every time you learn a new set. Some sets go in a completely different direction, like Sharp Joy, the third set, is giving you a completely different take on what you're doing. But later sets, all they are parts of the previous sets put together in a different way, in a different direction, in a moving direction as opposed to standing, but with the same techniques, but for different reasons. So you are facing different directions, you are changing the way that the movement is made, but the mechanics are the same. So if you study the sets properly and you train the first sets, then when you come to the later sets, you'll realize that those earlier movements or those earlier techniques are exactly the same. They're just done for a different reason, a different angle possibly, or a different conclusion when they come, you know, when they're developed.
You say, oh, people say there's so many sets in Lau Gar, but the truth really is that it's quite a conservative style in terms of sets compared to, say, you know, Hungar or Eagle Claw or Eagle style, whatever the hell. Do you know what I mean? Like, I mean, how many sets have we got?
Well, there are 7 sets before you take a black sash, and then after that you have 1 hand set, and the rest are all weapon sets, really. Yeah. You see that we talk about this many times about the politics of martial arts, and we've talked earlier about the fact that, you know, once the lower grades are starting to develop and they're starting to get up towards your grade, you've got to start looking for new things to teach them. Well, I don't believe that. I believe that you've just got to teach them better. You've got to make sure that they understand the movements better, and therefore you've got to understand them better. You've got to digest them better, because they may do the same sets as you, but they don't do it in the same way as you,
or for the same reason.
Or for the same reason, right? So everyone's got a different reason to do the set, but everyone's got the same reason to practice. So it really is important that people appreciate, first of all, that they're being taught new things about the same form, new ideas about the same movement. So but people often, there are instructors that cannot do that. They only know the movement for the sake of the movement. They don't understand the movement for the sake of its use. And many people really fall down on that. And again, I've said this on other podcasts, where you can watch a high grade perform a form, and he will perform it in exactly the same way, albeit fluidly, more fluidly anyway, than when he learned it, but he would be doing the movements in exactly the same size. He hasn't digested it. He doesn't understand that movement shouldn't be done in that way. It was taught that way so he could understand it. Can you imagine someone coming to your club and you're doing a set at like lightning speed, and then they go, "Oh, can you show me again? Can you show me again?" Oh, and then you do it lightning speed. Can you show me again?
Yeah.
And it's only lightning speed, not because you're doing it faster, but because you're doing it more economically.
Yeah, sure.
And that's how it works.
Yeah,
it
you always
becomes
say,
a more economical movement.
Yeah, well, you always said the smaller the move, the faster the fight. And since the essence of Lau Gar, is speed. We want to finish the fight. Why is it the sets in Lau Gar? Why is it the sets in Lau Gar are, relatively short compared to, say, you look at a set in Hungar? I mean, for Christ's sake, by the time he starts stopping, doing iron wire palm, I've done the set 5 times in that. You know what I mean?
That's exactly the reason you're able to practice a lot more. It's the pursuance of the need to fight, not the pursuance of the need to look pretty. So it's known as an ugly style for a reason. Okay, although I would argue it's not necessarily ugly, it's certainly not big flamboyant movements, and certainly as you learn it, those movements become shorter and shorter. So they're built on repetitive strength building techniques. Right. By practicing it, you're able to obviously develop those techniques anyway. It's the choice of grabbing 2 bricks with your fingers and running up and down for a while and just do that for years, or picking up about 10 bricks at a time and doing your best to try to carry those around. But it isn't going to make any difference how strong you are, how powerful you are, if you ain't fast.
Yeah. Right.
So you're developing those techniques to, you're working on the techniques as best you can without, just trying to use all the time looking pretty. You've got to make those techniques work. And these big long sets, you might say that they work and okay, yeah, that's great, but not if you practice them as big, great sets. You've got to break them all down, and a lot of the time when you break these sets down, there's not a lot in them. Right. They become very mostly exercise. Hungar is a good example of iron wire palm, lifting the iron wire over and over again, developing really big blows, rather large movements and so on. And I'm not suggesting that Hungar is not a good style. It is, but it's just it's a totally difference to the concept of training or concept of the pursuit of the usefulness of it. But again, that's my opinion. People who do Hungar will go, "What are you talking about?" But to watch someone do a Hungar set and then to watch someone do a Lau set, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, but it's worth saying as I've seen some people absolutely butcher Lau Gar sets on YouTube. Oh my God. Oh my good God! I mean,
that's just a lack of understanding. It's a lack of tuition as well.
Yeah. Because
often people are left to do it themselves. I mean, remember that Lau Gar is so prolific around the UK now that a lot of people, as we said in our first podcast, they actually just haven't got the people to teach them.
No.
And it is quite long in the tooth as well since it's been in the UK.
Yeah,
so.
but what I don't get is that more people in the BKFA are when you look at set competitions at the annual championship in Birmingham or wherever, they're doing wushu forms, and it's like, how do you translate martial science from wushu to Lau Gar? I mean, they're not compatible. No. But listen, some of the moves are the same. But if you're looking at a Lau Gar set and it's by definition small, fast, or it should be, and I'm not saying you need to train it like that, because you can train them big and flamboyant if you want. But when you look at sorry,
I was just going to say they're looking for things they know. So many people, obviously, if it's a one organisation as it is, and although they do open the competition to anybody who wants to come along and participate. That's the problem. They open it up to other people to participate, and then they see these long flamboyant sets and they go, oh, that looks good for a competition. So, and of course they're very good for a competition. They look great for a competition, for Hoksonying, for Hokwanying, these Hung Gar, tiger and crane, combination sets, and then these wushu sets and so on, and the tai chi forms, and they all look great. They all look really much more
kung fu-y.
Well, I was going to say, what's the word when they
marketable?
Just look,
they look
no,
no, but they do.
You're saying all the right words, but not mine.
Oh, right.
Aesthetic is the word I'm looking for.
I was going to say that.
Oh, well, that was on your cue, wasn't it? That was in your queue of words.
Yeah. No, but how?
They're far more aesthetic, and people see them and they go, oh, well, I'd like to learn something like that because I've got more chance of winning the competition. So then, of course, the style goes out the window because they're no longer looking at showing off their style. They're more interested in winning the competition with something that actually isn't even their style. And then and what that leads to then is people go, oh, I'd like to learn all that. Then they start shopping around, they start going to different clubs or different organizations, start getting a different perception of what martial arts is. They're looking at a completely an aesthetically pleasing dynamic. And rather than the fighting aspect, they already know they can fight better than a lot of people, and they go into these flamboyant things and come out with all this, sometimes it's absolute crap that they come out with, and but this is big, and this can do this and this can do that. Well, you had all that previously, and you just, all you've done is lengthen it. When people go out and they do other martial arts, and then again, this is down to my opinion. If you have a whole style and you stay at that whole style all your life, you'll pretty much learn every which way that you can use that style. When you learn part of that style and then go to another style to learn something else, then go to another style to learn something else, you actually increase your inability, if you like, to actually learn anything, because you can't, often they're not compatible anyway. So you're constantly at edge, you're constantly at arguing.
You're fighting the styles or
you're fighting your own understanding of what you're doing.
Well, you look at the differences between Lau Gar and Hung Gar, for example. They're huge. Like in terms of the gross movements of Hung Gar. They're not saying that Hung Gar doesn't have subtle movements. It does. But you look at, I've seen a load of sets on around the place and whatnot, and they just look so big and so powerful compared to Lau Gar. So if you transition from Lau Gar to Hung Gar, surely are you not swimming upstream, or are you?
Again, it's not just that though, is it? We all have a go at doing a little Tai Chi and so on. But I do Tai Chi. I teach Tai Chi, but I don't teach Tai Chi for the specific purpose of doing it as a martial art. I enjoy doing Tai Chi and demonstrating what the martial art implications are, but I do not teach it so that the people will learn it as a martial art. Yeah, but I think you teach Tai Chi and you practice Tai Chi in a similar way or manner than you would practice Lau Gar. So you're not over-emphasizing big wavy punches. You're still doing quite short punches, but you're doing them slower and more deliberate. Do you know what I mean? Yes, so I'm bastardizing Tai Chi. Yeah, that's exactly what you're doing. You're bastardizing Tai Chi. But you see that my whole pursuit of Tai Chi is just for health, for people who are not necessarily interested in martial arts. It's not, I don't do Tai Chi for martial art, the same as like 90%, or probably 99% of the people who actually train martial arts. I know that we've been to places where we've done demonstrations, and there have been other Tai Chi groups there when we've been doing the martial arts, and we've spoken to them, and we go, oh, that's a good martial art, and they're going, oh, this is not a martial art. We're saying, wait a minute, you're doing Tai Chi, aren't you? Oh, no, this is not a martial art. Tai Chi isn't a martial art. They just don't understand. They have no clue.
Does it? I mean, it's Tai Chi Chuan is Grand Ultimate Fist. What's not to understand?
They don't. They don't learn that much, and so when they do movements, often the movements have no, physical, technical or martial applications in that sense.
Do you think? I mean, I'm sorry to butt in. I'm thinking. I've got sets on my mind right now, forms on my mind. Do you think it's possible for one person to proliferate a style of martial arts? By the way they understand the sets or teach the sets or whatever,
I don't know, and you'll have to elaborate on that question.
So if the proliferation of a style, can it be done by just one person? Or do you need a socially diverse group of people who all have different interpretations of things to come together? Can one person understand a style that well that they can continue it?
Well, I think in history that has been the pursuance, and that's why they're called styles. I mean, by definition, a style is something that one person prefers to another, right. And that's why you've got lots of different styles. But again, it's like, if you learn karate as an example, why isn't karate just karate? Right. Why is it Shotokan karate, Wadaru karate, Kyokushinkai karate? Why is it different styles? Because each individual decides that he likes it one way as opposed to the person who taught him. So therefore you have this proliferation of people who are now teaching a different concept of what was once the same thing. Okay, now that can be a good thing because one of them is going to get the right idea, whereas others may follow just blindly in a path without development. And of course, in the size of China and the way that Kung Fu was proliferated around the whole country, and fighting skills have increased and so on over a period of time. What we're looking at though is a massive length of history, so we're seeing an awful lot of generations develop things that in certain cases they've become extremely useful concepts of fighting. They've become extremely good defense systems, if you like, whereas others are nothing more than a show. Right. And of course it's really, and in many cases you could argue that it may have started out as a show, but someone started to practice it and worked out how to make the technique work, and then kind of, if you like, directed it in a much better way. So you've got this proliferation of lots and lots of different styles, whereas really and truly it's down to the individual that's practicing it. Right. But with the knowledge that people have today, I guess there are many good styles, and there are many, 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 many more bloody bad styles. So what can we do in one person? Well, you only follow one person. That's my judgment, is, and whether it works or not is the proof of the pudding is in the eating, isn't it? With Lau, we have one individual that has taught pretty much everybody in the UK.
What's that scraping?
That's me, just bored. Oh. I'm messing about.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, sorry.
It's like Tourette's. You're on a podcast. You shouldn't be bored.
No. It's me. I'm listening to my own voice. Yeah. I'm sure I'm not the only one.
Oh yeah. No, probably.
Yeah. No. I was just. Where was I now? No, I've seen this little mark on my board, that my computer, my laptop board. Yeah. and it's got this little mark on it, and I thought, can I scratch it off? And it turns out that it's just because the stuff's missing. That's why I can't scratch it off.
I thought you were on Pornhub or something. Anyway,
right.
going back, you were talking.
I just realised what you said then, James.
Hang on, here's a segue for you. From that to Master Yao.
Yeah. But this is what I'm saying. In the UK, one person has created the way that Lau has been developed in the whole country. Okay, right. But since then, there are so many more people that have taken it in completely different directions. Some for the benefit of competition, and some because they believe they could be better traditionally. Well, none of them are better traditionally as far as I'm concerned, but they all are different people, so they all have a different approach. Now, some of them will try to rename this style as their own, and others will continue in the same way, and hopefully they'll get it. But you know, unfortunately, 90% of the people that do that don't get it, and I know that from experience. So it's just you're watching people, seeing how people, you know, try to interpret martial arts or Lau, as we're talking about now, and see how they try to interpret it and see what bloody mess they make of it sometimes. Yeah. So, but some have been very, very successful in concentrating on one specific direction.
Right.
So,
but at the cost of another direction, though.
Yes, it is at the cost of another direction. But when you say one person proliferating a style, shall we say that Lau's been successful in lots of different aspects of it, albeit maybe different teachers, you know. But I think as an organisation, if they were to maintain everything together and unify again, then it would become a great what's the word?
Formidable
asset. Well, it's a formidable style anyway. Yes,
but
and it would
as
become,
an organisation, though. You're talking
yes, it
about.
would be a formidable organisation. There is too much, if you like. There's too many people, you know, trying to become important, when really it's the style that's the most important thing. Okay. So we have to make the style number one in terms of that is what we're all working towards, is to make Lau the most you know, successful martial art, not as ourselves successful, but as the martial art is successful. That's always been my goal, and that's why I ended up going all over the country and all over the bloody world now to try to promote the way that Lau is taught. And you know, I can only do my best. People will argue that my best isn't the best. They can if they want, but we can always have that conversation together at some point. Any of them can talk to me and ask me a question. You know, that's all they have to do.
But you've never claimed that your way is the best way. You've just pursued it as a sort of holy quest or whatever. You know, I don't know how to describe it. But
yeah, if somebody wants to know what something is for, I'll give them an explanation of how I believe it should be used. Now, it's up to them to say, no, that doesn't work, but no one ever does.
Yeah, but
why?
Go on.
It works.
Yeah,
that's
but
it.
you've always said to me, listen, find argument in every technique. Find a reason for and against.
Yes, that's really important.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of what I think you push as my teacher, and as a great ambassador for the style of Lau. I mean,
Yeah.
Go on.
Sorry, I was going to say that's what made me so experienced, if you like, is encouraging people to argue every point I make. I want them to argue about the technical points that I make. I have my opinion about the history, I have my opinion about people, I have my opinion about styles, but the one thing I don't have is it isn't my opinion or my ideology of the style. It is just simply the style. That's the way I see it. So, and to prove that, if you like, people do the technique, and I say this is how that technique, I interpret that technique, if you like, or how that technique works. But it works, and this is, how people have got to see the technique. It either works or it doesn't. And if I'm giving them a technique and it works, then that's the way it is. That's how the style works. Because and of course, don't forget, I don't just say this is how you do it. There's 1,000 ways. I mean, as I've described to you already, there are 1,400,600 and so, I don't know, ways of doing the first set. Right? And techniques out of the first set. And people will go, how the hell do you know that? Well, it's just an equation. Right? It's not meant to be that other people can learn them all, because you can't. We can't learn them all, and half of them, a lot of them may not be any use to us.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we're about to wrap up. So before we finish, can you just, in the most simplest terms, without straying too far off the beaten path, can you explain that equation in Lau?
Okay. If imagine you do. Okay, the first form. You got the first form, and you go. There are 13 moves in the first form, but let's just call it 10 from mathematical point of view, so I won't get to the 1,400,000. I'll just call it 10 because maths is easy that way. Okay, so you have 10 techniques. Okay, each have at least 6 uses, so we equate 6 purposes to the technique that you do in the set. Okay, 10 movements, 6 uses is 60. Okay, you have 3 different positions that you can utilize those movements. That is the beginning of the movement itself, then the movement in itself, and then the end of the movement. So you have what's called the beginning of the journey itself, and the end of the journey. That's 360s. What's that?
That is 180.
Yeah, you have 5 ways of using energy. You can say that as a triangle with a small point accelerating into a large flat point, okay, from the apex to the flat end. You've got no energy accelerating. That's called a push. Okay, and if you turn it around the other way around, you've got a flat area dissipating into a point. You've got a large amount of energy dissipating into a small amount of energy. You've got a slap. Okay, you can obviously double them. So you've got a slap and a push, if you like. You've got a push and a slap, and you've got a constant. That's 5 ways of using energy. If you have 5 ways of using energy, you have 180 techniques. How many have you got?
900.
900. If you got 900 and you got 2 hands, 900 times 900 is
1,800.
No, 810,000. Get your bloody maths.
Is it
810,000 uses?
Oh God, sorry. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry. I was elsewhere then.
Yeah,
you're right.
Well, that's an equation, and it's just 10 techniques. The first form, 10 techniques. 810,000 uses. But there are 13 movements, which makes it over the million.
Over a million, yeah. Sorry, you. I was going to say, just to clarify for everybody listening, you said there were six uses for each technique. Just very briefly, what those 6?
Well, we refer to it as a block, a strike, a hold, a throw, a release, so on.
And a grab.
Block, strike, hold, throw, release, and grab. Yeah.
So
wait a minute. Block, strike, hold, throw. Release. That's all it is.
That's 6. Yeah, that's 6.
That's 6. Yeah.
And my maths is back on track now. So my maths. Is
Mine isn't. Mine is not. I was looking at my fingers and thinking, wait a minute, there's 7 there. But you see, you don't include things like
moving forward, moving
pressure
backwards.
points, moving. Yeah, well, if you move forwards, move backwards, turn to the side, and so on, you're changing everything, and you're increasing the number of possibilities. So it's actually an infinite number of ways of using the form, and people have to understand that. And if they can appreciate that, the whole idea of creating this this equation is simply to say to people, look, there is no end to learning.
Yeah,
it's a constant development. You cannot say, oh, this technique is for this, and then have done with it, because for other people it will have a completely different meaning.
Absolutely. Right, Steve, we've got to shoot. Thank you so much. I know it got a bit sort of heavy at points during that. And
yeah,
Jesus, I know you almost fell asleep. You almost fell asleep.
We're supposed to talk Kung Fu, aren't we?
Oh, yeah.
And that's what we are doing. We're talking Kung Fu because the whole idea is to get an audience that are interested in listening to Kung Fu. But the thing they've got to understand is we don't take ourselves seriously, but our knowledge is, we have a bit of information to give. Yeah. Whether people appreciate it or whether people agree with it or not, it's there for argument. So that's brilliant. That's what we want to do. We want to get people thinking.
Well, hey, if you've got an argument, if you disagree with us or you want to ask us any question or whatever, please get in contact with us on Facebook and via Messenger and that. Ping us over a message, and honest to God, we'll do our best to fight the case or to help you out, whatever the case may be. Guys, thanks so much for joining us on another episode of the Kung Fu Podcast. My name's James Still, and as always, I'm joined by my teacher, Mr. Steve Newbay. Steve,
thank you.
Take care of yourself. I'll see you soon.
Yeah. Hello, listener.
Goodbye, listener. Bye-bye.
Yes, bye.
I kick your little Beijing ass right now, man. I ain't scared of you. I know you know that little tricky shit. Come on.
Hi guys, thanks so much for joining us on the Kung Fu Podcast. If you like that and you want to find out more about us, you can head over to Facebook, Twitter, Instagram or YouTube and find us under SJN Martial Arts. And also guys, this podcast is available on Podbean and iTunes. So until next time, take care of yourselves, and we'll see you again on the Kung Fu Podcast.
Guns. Now, why doesn't somebody pull off 45 and bang, settle it?
No guns.